If you're struggling with Combat Cycle in DC Dark Legion, you're not alone. It's one of the hardest game modes to get a grapple on and learn how to play, and it takes a lot of your champions to be able to do well in the game mode. You're going to need a fairly well developed roster to do well against every boss. And today I want to start a series where I'm covering all the different bosses in Combat Cycle. I believe we have a couple more that have yet to come into the game. We've got a new one that's coming up very soon, Killer Tank. But today we're going to talk about the first one, and that's Devastator. So Devastator has this ability called Ejected, where he is going to hit your team very, very hard. It says that you're thrown off the battlefield and unable to return for a time. If you look at the footage that I'm going to show at the end of this video, you'll see you don't really get thrown off the battlefield. It's just more kind of like a stomp or like an earthquake move where he like rears back, and you can see this red circle show up on your screen, and it's going to hit everything inside that circle for a massive amount of AoE damage. So you got to watch out for that. But this is you need a lot of single target damage for this fight. You're also going to need damage over time. You're going to need a lot of healing. Characters like Superman are really going to excel here. And my general advice for a strategy for newer players who don't have access to a lot of the older bleed characters that we've had access to for the last few months, the ones that are coming very soon for you, Superman's going to do really well. You can build a team that helps him do a lot of damage and stay alive through all the heavy AoE damage that Devastator is going to deal. There are other characters I think that do really well against this boss, and I'll mention those. Joker, Sinestro, Green Arrow I think does a fairly decent job against this boss. I'm wondering if Constantine might be able to do well if you can get him ramped up fairly well. Really, any other character that augments the damage of those characters who are going to be your staple DPS against this boss, those are going to do well in this game mode as well. So characters like Cyborg, The Flash, and even Zatanna, so really solid support characters. I imagine if you were trying to run like a Bat Family synergy, maybe you could run Batgirl, something like that. But those, I think a support character actually can do fairly well in this game mode. The other piece of advice is you really need a very tanky, healthy character who can take a lot of damage, or you're going to need double healers. And for some team comps, you kind of need both. I think Superman is a good choice here because with enough force investment, he actually does have a good health pool. And I do prefer to run double healers because of the fact that he's a warrior, not a tank, so he is going to kind of have a little bit of an issue surviving towards the end. So let's talk about team building for different account styles. So for non-spenders, this is actually a good mode for your standard Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, Black Adam, Mira, and Harley or Superman composition. If you have a low investment Cyborg or Flash, you can try those to see if you can boost damage on a 5-star or better Superman. If you do that, you want to try to run a legacy piece on Cyborg or Flash that has energy gain so you can cycle his ultimate faster. For light spenders, I think the same rules apply as for non-spenders, but you might be able to swap in a Batman or a Harley for your Black Adam. If you have Ivy, try swapping her in and out for your Wonder Woman and see if you can get a little bit of extra healing. If you have Ivy, try swapping her in and out with your Wonder Woman to see if you can get a little bit of extra healing for your team. For Wells, a well-invested team like Superman, Cyborg, Mira, Ivy, and Green Arrow will achieve pretty great results, especially for newer players that don't have access to some of the characters that have been introduced in some of the older servers. If you're on a server that has Joker or Sinestro, I know you're probably already using them and they're going to perform really well. If you're not running a high investment Superman, you can go with Scarecrow. And I should mention that Robin and Deathstroke could be useful as well, though they suffer from getting caught up in the massive AoEs and would likely die pretty fast. As with some of my other guides, in particular the best starter guide that I put together and shared recently, I've included a few characters that are pretty solid at really low investment or actually 0-star investment. So your Flash, your Cyborg, and I've included Zatanna here because people will start getting access to her in the future, and she can do a decent amount of damage in addition to boosting the attack of other characters on the team. The other thing that I want to highlight is Ivy is, if you have a few stars on her, so you have her 2 basic attacks, the vines that heal you and the vines that do damage to the enemy. She's great for this battle because those vines will actually end up pulling aggro from Devastator, and she's also going to be able to provide a decent amount of healing for your melee characters. Let's take a look at my best squad in action against Devastator. As you can see, I achieved about a little over 18 million damage with this. Let's see, the comp was Superman, Joker, Mira, Ivy, and Green Arrow. And 4 of these characters are characters that you're already going to have access to if you're a new player. One of them you will not have access to yet, but he is coming soon, so I'm going to go ahead and show you this fight and see if we can talk through it a little bit. So Superman is going to be the only melee character in this comp, and you're going to need a fairly strong and healthy Superman for this. You can see it's annoying. Sometimes it's probably better to actually try to control this on your own because Mira, for whatever reason, likes to heal herself instead of everyone else. But, so far we're close to a minute in already, and Superman is still holding his own. So you see we're getting plenty of DPS on him. And so Joker is going to be constantly putting more and more debuffs on the boss as well, which is going to allow us to do a massive amount of damage. And as long as Superman's alive, he's going to continue to do his ultimate ability, and after he's done his ultimate 3 times, his attack is going to be heavily increased. We are taking a ton of damage here. Let's see if we can get some heals off. And that's fine. Now watch, he's going to come towards our ranged DPS, and he's going to kill them very, very fast. So it should be over in just a second. This isn't quite my high score, but we're hanging in there though. So yeah, I mean, pretty good team comp there. And we can do one other one just for folks who do not have access to the Joker. Let's see what happens when we put in Cyborg. So Cyborg is going to heavily increase the attack that Green Arrow and Superman are able to do, and you're really reliant on Superman staying alive more for this. So that's kind of a difficulty with this, with using Cyborg, is once Superman dies, you got 2 characters who are ineffective because Cyborg really doesn't do a ton of damage himself. I think you can do a little bit more with some heavy force investment, but typically on his own, he's not going to do a ton. And you can see we're already doing significantly less damage than we did with Joker in the lineup, but this is still going to be a really solid team for you. And Superman's fairly accessible in the bleed. It's fairly easy before his bleed is over with. If you started close to the beginning of his bleed, you should be able to get him to 5 white stars. And Cyborg is kind of a character that you only need at 0 stars to perform, so fairly accessible team here. Let's see if Superman survives this. We're actually doing a better job of sustaining here than we did under Joker, and so you can see that because Superman was able to survive this long, we're going to end up doing more damage with this team than we did with the Joker team. So I think this is really good news for newer players who don't have access to some of these some of these characters that were available during the soft launch. Well, that's it for this Devastator guide. This is one of the more important combat cycle bosses for you to learn how to master early on, because this is the one that's going to give you gems. So other than AC/DC shards, it's probably the most important combat cycle boss to master. Future Quantum here, and I was just explaining to you that Devastator was one of the best combat cycle bosses to master, and I still stand by that. I just want to point out that as of the filming of this video, there were 3 Devastators still in the game, and they're trying to remove 2 of those, I believe, to add additional bosses. So eventually there's going to be 7 different bosses, 1 for each day. One of the Devastators should remain, so you definitely still want to get accustomed to the boss fight. Down the road, you're going to be fighting it less, but I still think, assuming that they leave gems with Devastator, he's still going to be one of those bosses that you want to make sure that you're focusing on improving your roster for. I hope you found this guide helpful. Again, I mentioned I'll be making guides for all the combat cycle bosses in the future, so be on the lookout for those in the coming weeks. I'll probably sprinkle these in with some videos on some other aspects of the game. So be patient, and over the next 3 to 6 weeks, hopefully we will have all the combat cycle guides released to you. The other thing I'll mention is that I always have the companion infographics that we go over available on my Discord. They're also available on the official Discord, and I try to post them on Reddit, Instagram, and Twitter or X whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, those infographics are free. They're perfectly fine for you to distribute to your leagues and pin in your Discords. You can actually go and webhook from my Discord into yours and provide those guides there. I'm not going to provide this explanation in all the combat cycle guides, but I just want to mention that for anyone who's new here. And with that out of the way, please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more DC Dark Legion guides and gameplay videos. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what your best team is for the Devastator, and I'll see you in the next video.